Assalamu alaikum. So it's a typical British day. Wet, miserable, and rainy. I wanted to take an opportunity to step out into the garden so I could have a chat with you, brothers and sisters, especially my sisters. So I'm assuming many of you have already seen the rounds that are going out involving how the embassies of the Swedish, Norwegian, Danish, German, and Finnish governments are now chock-a-block in places like Thailand, Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, etc., etc. Third to second world countries, which are basically importing nothing short of wives in every capacity. That is the bulk of what these liberal, super liberal, feministical democracies are now doing. Now, the question you must ask is why? Why is this going on? Well, the answer is very simple, sister. Feminism. Feminism has gotten so bad in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway that the birth rate of Swedish, and we're talking white Swedish men, the cisgendered men that are doing this, the birth rate has gotten so bad in Sweden that now 1 in every 3 women are imported brides for Swedish men. So this begs the question, why? To all the feminists supporting Muslim women out there, alhamdulillah, and I want you to pay attention to this. This is like a crystal ball. The historians have the ability to predict time frames going forwards. Now, the really good ones can do 50 years ahead. Occasionally people can do about 40. Me, I'm pretty crap at this, realistically speaking. When you're looking at analytical sciences, I can only move about 9 to 10 years ahead of us. But even with my understanding of analytical sciences and patterns of people's movements and marriage and hatches and dispatches, I can predictively say with some relative assertiveness that feminism, fourth wave feminism, is dying horrifically across the Western world. And the reason it's dying is because Western men do not want feminism in any way, shape or form. Now, human society is built for men and women. It's in the Chinese version of yin yang. You cannot have light without dark. You cannot have women without men. So the reality is, with all of these mass importations of brides, this is a predictive understanding of where feminism will be in roughly 10 to 15 years. It now only represents about 7% of Western women. 7%. And that's a good estimation. That they are estimating it with a good predictable numbers in much of the variations that go along involving mathematics. So in reality, you need to ask yourself, since Muslim men are able and willing to marry Christians and Jews, now personally I don't subscribe to that. I think, alhamdulillah, a man should marry a Muslim woman, and I'm not the kind of man that believes a woman's place is only in the kitchen. Remember, I've put out in probably 100 videos, give or take, about men doing housework. I've got at least a dozen videos here on YouTube to my beautiful sisters about me showing young men how to cook, even with my clumsy methods that I do as a baker stroke fishmonger. So I'm not exactly a professional chef per se, and I never really have claimed to be. But even I managed to understand and be able to teach young men how to cook. So I'm not some kind of women's places in the kitchen. But if you want feminism and Islam at the same time, you only need to look at the ultra-liberal Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, and see the actual crux of the change, the uptick of men importing their brides, and know very well that your Muslim men prefer traditional wives, to realize how this trend moves. And it doesn't take rocket science for Muslim men to go, we're still allowed to marry Christians and Muslims. We're still allowed to marry Christians and Jews, and we can comfortably marry any Filipino Christians. Like, the Philippines is the export for wives. It is literally the export center for wives. So think about this when you're engaging in the identity politics and realizing that the Quran and the Sunnah is enough, that Muhammad, peace be upon our Prophet, in all of his infinite wisdom, placed men and women in their roles. Now, these roles are not exactly the same. They're not. We're not equal. Men are physically stronger. Women are far more intuitive towards what needs to be done for community and safety of society. You know, men and women have each of their own unique roles. And these points are almost never temporarily pulled out. You see, you feminist Islamists need to realize, look upon the ye mighty of the super liberal Norway and look at how its feministic society is absolutely in free fall right now as we see it. And you ask yourself, is that really where you want your sons and daughters to be in 20 years' time? Now, my predictions may be off. I may be out a little bit. I may be off, and I'm not the greatest. I've only got a bachelor's degree in history, and my analytical science is a little on the rusty side. But even if I'm off by a few years, 5 or 10 on either side, it is worth mentioning that Muslim men can marry Christians, they can marry Jews. And alhamdulillah, I'm not some proponent of that. I still think that marrying within Islam is absolute requirement, and I believe all Muslim men, especially reverts, should consider marrying divorcees and single mothers, because that is part of the sunnah. But we don't have to. And if you want to make things that difficult, if you want to be feminists, we don't need to. Sisters, we don't need to. We can. As long as they are practicing people of the Torah and of the Injil, we can marry them. And that's a critical point that you need to understand. And it's not a point of a threat. It's merely look upon the examples of what feminism has done to ultra-liberal countries across Europe right now. Literally, the embassies in Germany, France, Finland, not so much France. France is clamping down on all forms of foreign brides, alhamdulillah, and that's actually, they're getting backlash from that from their own conservative community. But it's going on. Like, the ultra-liberal countries are devouring upon themselves. I just thought I'd give that reflection to all of those out there who consider themselves feminist Muslims. Ooh, billah.